Dynasty Warriors Origins is finally upon us, and with having early access to the game since November and having dove over 200 hours into the game, 100%ing it, and finding a bug that forced me to replay everything over again because it corrupted my file and made me start over, which I talk about in this video, I think I have a really good feel about Origins, and in this video I'm going to give you my thoughts in full about Dynasty Warriors Origins. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Dynasty Warriors Origins is in full swing, and we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and everything in between about Dynasty Warriors Origins that I loved, hated, and things that you guys should watch out for. Now, my review here is not going to go into too many details in terms of what the story will entail or things that would spoil too much of what's really going to happen. It's going to be a vague kind of understanding of each point, and if I go into anything a little too detailed, it'll probably be things that you guys are going to experience anyway, but it doesn't have anything to do with the story, if that makes sense. So it's going to be a vague, very vague spoilers, nothing too crazy. And with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Starting off with the overall presentation of the game. Probably the most breathtaking Dynasty Warriors game that we've had, along with the enhanced interactiveness of the familiar cast. It led to an extremely enjoyable experience that was so fun to watch, instead of the bland robotic movements we unfortunately experienced in the game we shall not name. The characters moved pretty seamlessly through their conversations without repeating the same movement over and over again. So you don't get that choppy feel that we saw in Dynasty Warriors 9. That has been completely eradicated, and also all of the CG cutscenes, the big movie-like ones for this series, has never been better. Everything in these scenes looks so crispy. One of the biggest flaws though with the presentation, unfortunate. Hopefully they fix it by the time this comes out, and if not, hopefully they get it on at some point. But for some of the dialogue sequences, not the big CG ones, but just like your regular ones, there was that glitchy shadow effect that plagued Dynasty Warriors 9 for a while, and I would say about 30 to 40% of the conversations that I saw. Like, I'm not saying that it plagued the entire conversation, but there was like a glimpse of it, or you can see it on the side of their face, or maybe behind them. You know, that sort of glitchy, shadowy thing that happens every now and then, making it a little distracting at times, but overall, you know, besides that, the presentation was absolutely beautiful. Now, next up, the biggest point of Dynasty Warriors Origins, the main selling point, the story. Did it deliver? Yes it did, I would say so. By the end, it had me wondering kind of what would happen next. And you kind of want to see what happens after, like how are they going to take Yi-Ling, how are they going to spin Hefei, or some of the other more intense battles. You know, really looking forward to how those turn of events would affect the relationships that you build, because by the end of it, you're pretty smoochy with the Liu-Sun alliance. So that would be very interesting to watch. I was super intrigued by the end of the story, and I really loved everything about it. Overall, it was a really enjoyable experience, especially with the addition of these newer characters that we have never seen before, which was really cool to see. You know, you have your protagonist and you have kind of his buddies with him. So if they end up making another game, it would be cool to see how they return. Now, some of the downsides though is the viewpoint, in my opinion, for Cao Cao's forces. Now, unfortunately, if you have not played the game yet, this will be a slight spoiler. If you want to skip to this number on the screen, it will jump right over it, but there's a small part I really want to talk about that I did not like about the story. It's a viewpoint that I heavily disagree with, because I started with Wei, and when I got to Shu and Wu, I was expecting a similar pushback and disdain that by the one was showing Cao Cao and his forces, but the one for Liu Bei was barely existent. It happened for like a split second, and the one for Sun Quan was extremely short-lived, at least in the hypothetical route. But for Cao Cao, there's absolutely no wiggle room for his forces being the villain team again, which I thought was really, really bad, because that's only going to, one, make it worse for the Kingdom of Shu. You guys have seen, hopefully you guys have seen this video where I talk about the Shu hate and how that's only going to exacerbate it, because they are not only the good guys to everyone in here, but they get the best light from the new OC character, who is trying to go about attaining peace because of the tragedy that happened to their village, which makes sense. But unfortunately for this character, his perspective is that Liu Bei is much better than Cao Cao, and it's just a viewpoint that is just not something that you want. It's just, it would be nicer to have seen a more neutral stance, or him aligning himself with, you know, the tribes that he did, but not having such a heavy opinion on the three kingdoms, or he has a similar take on all three. Like, there's got to be something that he hates about all three of them, which he does a little bit with Liu Bei, but it's just nowhere near as much as Cao Cao. And he like forgives him like so quickly. It's so crazy. I just could not agree with how they decided to showcase that. But moving on to a smaller thing I want to give an example about, and I'm going to cover it in a different video much more extensively, is that some of the things that they did were very cookie cutter and bland, and I just didn't appreciate them. For example, Ling Xiao's death is done in poor taste in my opinion, and it could have been showcased so much better. You guys will see what I'm talking about. Maybe it won't bother you, but it bothered me. Do we know he's going to die? Yes. It's part of the story, but the way they handled it was very, very tasteless. Dynasty Warriors 5 handled this event way better. And it would have been cool to see something similar, you know, have the, you know, Gan Ning and Ling Tong have their thing, but it's not as, and I know they're not focused on them, but it's not as good as it was before. It was just a little disappointing to see some of those smaller things being handled that way. Other than those few points, the story itself was great to experience, and for me is on par with Dynasty Warriors 7, like I mentioned in this video. Nowhere near Spirit of Sonata. I think Spirit of Sonata was way better. I mean, the way they captured everything. This is a great story, a great start to something new, and I love going through the story for this game. Now coming up next, we have the gameplay. My goodness, hands down the best part of Dynasty Warriors Origins. I think I can confidently say that this is the best gameplay from a Dynasty Warriors. It's a perfect blend of your traditional Dynasty Warriors feel of sweeping tens and hundreds of soldiers at once, along with the focused combat against enemy officers. It requires true attentiveness to succeed on the harder levels and leaves you feeling quite rewarded when you successfully complete the challenge. It's a great feel. The weapon's uniqueness is a huge plus as well, as each weapon is tailored to be unique compared to every other weapon. You know, you got C combos from the old games for the sword and the halberd. You got the charge attack focused weapons like the Podao or the lance. And then you got the strong attack focused weapons like the staff and the twin pikes, and it's just every weapon is different and you guys are all going to align or drift towards a certain style based on the way it plays. While I wish there was more, I'm actually quite happy with the selection that we have as of right now. Of course, the biggest downside to Dynasty Warriors Origins gameplay is the cloned weapons given to other characters. It has been talked about playing, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I definitely heavily dislike the clones given to the iconic characters, especially the ones that have a weird cohesion, like Jiashu and the wheels, or like Huanggai and Sun Ce with the gauntlets. You know, someone had to have them, I guess. It's just a little weird for them, in my opinion. The morale and the courage system that they added into the game was beautifully implemented, forcing you to pay attention to it. Morale heavily affects a battle now, and the strategy you implement during the battle weighs much more heavier. If your morale drops too low, your allies are going to start dropping as well. It's really bad. Conversely, keeping a high morale and taking advantage of tactics and things to help boost your teammates' courage is all extremely important when navigating some of the larger and harder battles. I absolutely love it, and while the tacticalness of the battlefield, I believe, waned in some of the endgame, it's still something you have to pay attention to. Overall, I think Dynasty Warriors Origins, like I said, is the best gameplay from a Dynasty Warriors. Now, moving into the characters, relationships, and the bond's significance. First off, the inclusion of the playable characters we have are each given a much better show of importance than in previous games. Every character through the story and the bonds have roles and personalities to showcase that allow you to connect to each character that we've never seen before. Some of the choices on the characters were really, really interesting. It was cool to see, you know, the flesh version of Zhou Song and Xun You, who had a very bland and non-impressive start in Dynasty Warriors 9. You guys know what I'm talking about. But also seeing different sides of characters like Zhao Yun falling asleep on you because he's been pushing his body so hard, or you know, Chen Gong describing more in detail about who he is and why he feels the way he does. You know, very, very interesting in what he does. Or like those really interesting moments given to us by characters like Yue Ying.
Tonight, I'm going to take all of your measurements.
Hey, yo! Regardless, the characters, I think, from an overall perspective, were showcased really well, and pretty evenly, I would say. The ones who got the most spotlight were obviously the leaders and companions, but I didn't feel like the other ones were left behind this time. I still feel like something with the bonds and the relationships with the characters were missing, like an extra element to the bonds or something that was really special and unique when characters' bonds were maxed. Like for me, when you max out the characters' bonds, it just didn't feel super impactful. Like it just, you know, you max them out and you kind of move on. The companions, I believe, always give you a battle art, but the other ones are just kind of like, you know, high five. But they were all showcased really, really well, and I think the relationships and the bond and the significance of the characters that we love was taken care of much, much better in this game. Now moving into the voice acting. Woo! We got some good ass voice acting about that. Yeah! Okay, so now, overall, voice acting for Origins is better for 9. I mean, it's a low bar, I get it, for sure. But it's not as good as the iconic ones. But, you know, as the series continues, we are just gonna have to accept the fact that our beloved characters that we love will be voiced by others moving forward, and they will sound different. We just have to get used to it. After 200 hours in the game, I've gotten used to all the voices by now. I'll have a separate video going through each voice acting issue or weirdness I found for characters that I had to get used to. For example, like Gulgia's squeakiness.
I think we should eliminate both the Wuan and the Yuan.
Dian Wei's twang.
That young lad carrying herbs around the camp. Is he with you?
Zhang Liao's squeakiness.
I am Zhang Liao.
Xiahou Dun and Yuan Shao's super serious sound.
Cao Cao, you're here.
Mightn't it be too hasty to move on already?
But again, after playing, I've done like 5 or 6 playthroughs now. They all have grown on me and they all relatively fit. The only downside for the voice acting is some of the pronunciation for some of these characters. My goodness, like we've got the Italian Lu Bu.
Louis Bu.
Louis
Bu is attacking Puyang.
We've got the elegant Sun Sa.
Lord Swan Sir.
Lord Sun Swa.
And it's just, they flip, so like sometimes the like Shunyo will be on the screen and the person talking to him will say, "Hey Shunyu, it's good to see you." You know, they'll get them flipped and stuff. Those are the little minor gripes I did not enjoy. Some of the pronunciation that I believe they're trying to overcorrect, I don't know what they were doing, led to some really bad pronunciations. And half of the characters say woo, the other half say ooh. Yeah, it's definitely the only downside, and I talk about it more in a different video. But overall, voice acting is a great start to where the characters need to be. I will link the more in-depth video for voice acting down below. Like I said, overall voice acting for Origins, in my opinion, was good. Now, last section we have is the endgame and replayability of the game. Does Dynasty Warriors Origins have replayability? Absolutely. Is it the best from a Dynasty Warriors game? No. No, it's not. In my opinion, Dynasty Warriors 8 is the best when it comes to that, along with the content. But like the game was advertised, most of the focus for the game was story, and it does fill a large portion of the experience. With that being said, in my opinion, the replayability for Dynasty Warriors Origins, at least for now, who knows what's going to happen, is severely lacking. The only games that have worked for replayability, in my opinion, is Dynasty Warriors 6 and Dynasty Warriors 9, and maybe Dynasty Warriors 2 in terms of content. But after you beat all the stories, you unlock all the hypotheticals, and beat all the challenges, I mean, that's pretty much it. Not saying that's not going to potentially be like 100 hours of content for you guys to do, and depending on how easy it is for you to do the challenges and all that, but I found most of the challenges to be pretty easy, and it just didn't feel as rewarding. The map doesn't offer much besides, you know, picking up the little gem, the pyroxene, and clearing skirmishes to build up peace in areas, along with the castles providing just stock up options on items. Like you can't go into them, you can't like build them up, you can't like station people there's nothing of really significance for the castles, so a lot of limits on that aspect. The weapons reforging system feels pretty like prepubescent and a bit bland. I mean, rank 8 weapons are stuck the way they are, which is fine because, you know, most endgame weapons for Dynasty Warriors have been traditionally unchangeable, but it would have been nice to change their properties to make them more viable. But maybe that would have made the endgame really easy, and they decided not to do that. Anyway, the point is that I definitely enjoyed the end game for Origins, but I feel like it's missing so much after you complete the story, and hopefully we get more in DLC or Origins 2. Now, overall thoughts for Dynasty Warriors Origin is it was a great experience and a fun Dynasty Warriors game. Is it top 5 for me personally? For the main games, maybe number 5. Out of all the Dynasty Warriors games, no, it's not going to break my top 5. But that's okay. You know, I enjoyed Dynasty Warriors Origins for what it is. That is a new, fresh, and unique look on the Dynasty Warriors franchise. The gameplay 100% carries this game. I mean, just the gameplay alone is worth the purchase in my opinion. But overall, I would give Dynasty Warriors Origins an 8 out of 10. I think some of the aspects that make a Dynasty Warriors game was missing just a tad, and that's things like the other characters' impactfulness, the uninspiring side missions, and short-lived endgame that makes me feel like I want more. It's just a bit incomplete in a way, in my opinion, but it was still, again, a fun experience. I enjoyed a lot of it, and the gameplay, again, that is what is carrying it for me personally. Anyway, guys, that's all I have. Let me know what you think about Dynasty Warriors Origins down below. If you guys played it, are you guys going to get it? Don't let my review sway you from getting it or not getting it. If you are a Dynasty Warriors fan, you will enjoy the game. It is a fun game. You'll see different sides of the characters that are part of it, and there's some interesting tidbits that were fun to explore. But for the most part, it's not like a crazy top-tier Dynasty Warriors game, in my opinion. There were some better ones out there, but it was nice to see something new. But that's all I have for the video, guys. Hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, definitely appreciate a like, comment, or subscribe. Let me know down below what you guys want to see next about Dynasty Warriors Origins. I got a lot of content coming for this. I've done a lot to prep for videos for you guys, so let me know down below, and I will see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching, everyone.